But I'd like to introduce myself for those who have not met me yet. I'm Jill Gable. I'm one of the school counselors here. Jenny Stahl is who's been with the district for many years, is probably the face that you guys recognize the most, but I'm excited to be here. I wanted to talk just a moment for the seniors. How annoying is that feedback? Is it better? It's better over here. Okay. So I wanted to talk just briefly with the seniors that are here tonight about the scholarships. I've had a lot of questions about when certain months are coming. I received today the Fond du Lac Area Foundation ones. So Mrs. Stahl and myself will be working hard over the next couple days to get that updated so that you have them early next week to start on them. A few other ones that should be coming soon are the Oriole Nation ones that everybody's been eager to fill out, which is great. Just a reminder that the scholarship list is embedded into Haiku. If you go onto your Haiku account where it says your classes, right next to it it says extras. When you click on that, that's where you'll find the counseling department's website. For parents, you can access it through the district website. When you go under the district website, you scroll down and say meet the counselors, they'll be in there for you as well. But just a reminder that both Mrs. Stahl and myself are here to proof anything that you need, ask questions. I'd much rather you make daily appointments with us than to not fill out one because it was too cumbersome or you didn't know necessarily how to start that essay or something like that. But if you guys have questions about scholarships, let us know after tonight's meeting so that we can make sure we get the right information out to you. So before that, I would like to introduce Jill Dagger. She is with UW Fond du Lac and has a pretty diverse knowledge of financial aid, and I'll let you take it away.
Good evening, everybody. As Jill mentioned, I'm from UW Fond du Lac. I currently am not the financial aid go-to gal for the UW colleges. However, a majority of my experience in higher education was founded in financial aid. I started at Concordia St. Paul in 2005, spent 3 years there, spent 4 years in our central financial aid office. Now I'm in a different role, however, I still keep myself up to speed on the financial aid piece with my high school relations hat. Because of course, one of the burning questions of everybody is, well, I'm interested in going to college, but how do I finance it and how do I make this happen? So tonight we're going to talk about the process of applying for financial aid, what types of aid are available, and those sorts of things. And then I'm hoping to get through it fast enough that you will have time to ask questions at the end. I am not opposed to, however, if you have a question as we're going along, feel free to interrupt. That does not bother me one bit, and we can answer those as we go as well. Okay, so just to give you some brief background in terms of the UW system schools in the state. We do have 26 campuses in UW system. 13 of those are comprehensive universities such as UW Oshkosh, Stevens Point, Milwaukee, etc. The handout you were given today is representative of UW colleges. Those are the 13 two-year freshman, sophomore transfer institutions throughout the state. So that handout references the school code and sorts for the two-year UW campuses. If you're going to a different institution, of course, you'll look at their website, or you'll navigate through when you're in the FAFSA using their search tool to identify which campus you are attending. But the information that is critical in there, the steps to apply for financial aid are the same regardless of where you go. And when you open it up fully, it outlines all of the federal and state aid programs that are available in the state. Those are similar wherever you go as well. So those are not institution specific. So it is valuable regardless if you're going to UW Fond du Lac or elsewhere. Okay, so we're going to talk about a variety of things today in terms of the financial aid process. How financial aid is calculated, looking at the cost of the institution that you are attending, compared to other costs, the types of financial aid, the application process itself, and then some tidbits or some important points about filing the FAFSA, because there are some questions that families get hung up on, so I do want to spend some time navigating through those as well. So what is financial aid? Financial aid is a support system to help an individual go to college. It should not be implied that financial aid is going to fully fund a student's college experience. There is an expectation that the family is helping in some way, shape, or form, or contributing to some degree to offset the college expenses. Financial aid is available to help make that easier. So financial aid is coming from typically federal and state aid programs. So when you file with FAFSA, it is typically the one application that applies you to multiple types of things. Scholarships, we'll talk about a little bit, those are a different avenue because you have to do a different application process for those sorts of things. But federal and state aid come through completion of the FAFSA as that initial application. And it's certainly, those types of aid programs are helping students make college possible. So let's get into the nitty-gritty. What are the costs associated with college? So when an institution is looking at awarding financial aid, the first thing that they have to do, and every institution nationwide has to identify the costs associated with going to their institution. So this includes a variety of things. When you receive a financial aid award letter from an institution, we are required to reflect the cost of the attendance at that particular school. And there's typically a bottom line there, and students panic because they see $18,000, $20,000, $30,000. But keep in mind, for financial aid purposes, we have to incorporate things beyond tuition and fees. So based on this list here, it's looking at tuition and fees, room and board, transportation, miscellaneous expenses such as maybe technology or computers, those sorts of things. So there's a variety of things that come into the institution's cost of attendance. The tuition and fees piece of that is the amount that is due or payable to the school for your classes. And then, of course, if you go to a four-year institution, you move away from home, there's typically going to be that room and board expense as well that is payable to the institution. So those are the items that you're really looking at. How do I finance those using financial aid? Or making some payments out of pocket. So don't panic when you see that really, really big number. Look into the details and see what those couple pieces. Thank you. Let's see if we can. Okay. So the general timeline of things, and I know there's a variation in terms of students here. We have some juniors and their parents and some seniors and their parents. So I want to make a clarification here. For this academic year, so students who are going to college next fall, you are filing the 2016-2017 FAFSA. That application became available January 1st. So that application is up and running, it is ready to go. When you file your taxes, you can take care of that process right away. For the juniors in the room, the process is changing slightly. The FAFSA itself is going to look the same, but the timeline in terms of when it becomes available is shifting. They are actually making it available next fall, October 1st. You are going to file the 2017-2018 FAFSA is available October 1st. You will use your 2015, so the taxes you are filing right now, to file that FAFSA. So seniors, right now you're waiting for your 2015 taxes to get wrapped up to file next year's FAFSA, the 16-17, and you can do that right away. Juniors are going to use those same taxes to file your FAFSA, but you're going to start that process after October 1 of next year. Yes.
For the seniors that are here tonight, will they be filing in October as well? Is it as important for them to file right away in October again?
Yeah.
Or is it more important for our incoming first-timers?
It is free game for everybody, so it is going to be available for all students. So then seniors, you could be completing this process relatively soon. The good news is for you is it should be pretty streamlined because you're going to use the same tax information for both years. So that information should pretty much roll in, and you're going to have a very easy time filing your second FAFSA. The issue with this is you are filing the FAFSA using, so juniors and students who are going to be applying for their second year. The hiccup in this process is going to be you're using tax information from over a year ago, and financial situations change from year to year. Your life changes, sometimes employment changes, those sorts of things. Sometimes it's for the better, and maybe your 2015 tax information wasn't as high. Sometimes, unfortunately, it goes the other way where your situation changes and you have lower income. So what do you do in that situation? Financial aid offices, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, do have the ability to review your FAFSA information and make changes based on your change of circumstances. So you need to document the change of circumstances, the change of income, and they can work with you to account for that. So if in 2015 your situation looks one way, and in 2016 your situation changes, don't panic that you're using your 2015 taxes for both years, because talk to the financial aid office, contact them directly, and they will work with you to make the necessary changes to reflect accurate information. So you are qualifying for the types of aid based on your need at that point in time. So does this make sense? This is the biggest change going into this next school year. Seniors, 2016-2017 FAFSA, using your 2015 taxes available right now. Juniors and then seniors, as you apply for your second year, your 2017-2018 FAFSA will be using your 2015 taxes, and it's available October 1st. Everybody with me? Okay, so the timeline's shifting a bit, but the rest of the arrow remains the same to some degree. So submit the FAFSA, that is always the first step in the puzzle. Then you will follow through on any other materials that are requested from the institution. Public institutions, so UW schools in the state, typically do not have an institutional application. They use the FAFSA to make determinations regarding your federal and state aid. And that's because they don't offer a lot of institutional donor-based scholarships. If any of you are looking at attending private institutions or potentially going out of state and going to school as a non-resident, you may have additional paperwork to fill out up front before the financial aid process even starts. So you might have an institutional app where they collect more information, and oftentimes that's related to offering institutional aid. Okay? So you're going to do the FAFSA, you're going to see if the institution you're attending requires any supplemental materials, and then you will go through receiving the financial aid award offer. For the seniors in the room, this is going to start happening in mid-spring. So most campuses, especially in UW system, you'll start seeing things late March into April. But you should be filing the FAFSA as soon as possible. Our priority deadline, for example, is April 1st. There probably are some UW schools that it's March 1st. There are private schools that are even earlier than that because they have significant differences in the types of aid that they award. So anticipate receiving the aid offer, and then you have to decide ultimately based on making comparisons between the institutions you're interested in, what is the best fit for you, and then make an enrollment commitment to an institution. Oops. Oh no, hit the wrong button. Okay, so what types of financial aid are available on that award offer that you will be sent? So there are some non-federal aid types of financial aid available. So these are the things that are not applicable through the FAFSA. Scholarships. And Jill already talked about, North Fond du Lac has some really, really great scholarship opportunities that students should be pursuing, whether it's through the school and the community, whether it's through the Fond du Lac AC, whether it's through the institutions that you plan to attend. So for example, at UW Fond du Lac, if any students in the room are coming to our campus, we do offer institutional scholarships through our UW Fond du Lac Foundation. Those scholarship applications are already available. Those applications are sent directly to admitted students, so you should take action. Those will probably be sent in February sometime, and then there's an April 1st due date. If you're not coming to UW Fond du Lac, but you're going elsewhere, it is worth the time and energy to contact those schools to see if they have any freshman scholarships available. So definitely do some outreach there as well. Scholarships, of course, the benefit to those, you don't have to pay them back. And oftentimes the return on investment is high. If you spend 1 hour writing an essay to receive a scholarship, whether it's $250, $500, what have you, $250 for 1 hour of work, we would all love to get paid that. So take the time and energy, and I can't emphasize this enough. I just did a presentation in December with Marion and Lorraine Park, and we're all tooting the same horn. We are seeing more and more, we're getting more and more frustrated with the decline in applicants for the scholarships that we have available. Year after year, we have to extend our deadline because students are not applying for scholarships. Be that person who takes the initiative and goes after that money, because that is money you do not need to pay back, okay? So parents, encourage your students to take full advantage. Maybe help them with the search process, but then certainly get them involved in the application process itself. Where to find scholarships? Of course, the school itself is a good starting point. Contacting the financial aid office, as I said. Keep an eye out in the local community. When I was in college, I got a scholarship from Walmart, for example. Or if you work at a grocery store, sometimes the Wisconsin Grocers Association offers scholarships. So look for scholarship postings, in the break room, at your job, those sorts of things. Just keep your eyes out because there is money available to help you out. And then there are some online searches as well. The one that had been most common in the last 10 years is FastWeb. But there are some new and improved scholarship searches as well. What's nice about these is you set up an online profile. So you establish an account, you set up a profile, demographic information included, maybe some career interests, extracurriculars you've been involved in, community organizations you've been involved in. And this online entity does the searching for you and then funnels applicable scholarships into your queue where you can take a look at them, see if they actually fit. I mean, take that with a grain of salt. They're going to send a lot of things your way. You might fit 1 or 2 of the requirements, but spend time looking at them because there might be a handful that you meet all the requirements and then take that next step to apply. Certainly some you're going to filter out and say, oh, that doesn't work for me because of X, Y, Z, but they're doing the work for you, which is critical.
What was the name of that site?
FastWeb, so F as in Frank, ASTWEB.com. That's been one of the most popular ones, but we have seen a shift to the ones listed on the screen here. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about federal and state aid. So federal aid is essentially what is awarded based on the FAFSA results. So most common, that is the federal Pell Grant. There are a few other grant programs that are coordinated through the Department of Ed. Work, study, and loans. And the only application for these things to initially qualify is the FAFSA itself. So the federal Pell Grant, that is solely based on need. So students, you put all this information into the FAFSA, it comes out with an output that the financial aid office is given, and then they determine based on that number alone if you qualify. When you file the FAFSA and you hit submit, they will already give you an idea if you qualify for the federal Pell Grant and the types of loans you'll be eligible for. So you kind of know that information up front. The federal Pell Grant is the same regardless of which institution you go to because it's simply based on the estimated family contribution that is out from the from the FAFSA calculation. So the Pell Grant is the same across the boards. The Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, or we call it SEOG, that is based on need, and each school has a designated pot of money, and when that pot of money is gone, it's gone. So the Pell, you're going to get that no matter when you apply throughout the academic year. That money is always flowing through. SEOG only goes to the students who apply the earliest. So that's where applying early, February or March, is really to your benefit because some aid programs have limited funds, and when it's gone, it's gone. Okay, work study is the other. Yes.
So for the SOEG, is that part of the award package that your school of choice
Yes.
sends you?
So if you qualify for SEOG, it is a federal grant, and it will be on the award letter up front. So it's not something, it does not require any additional steps on your behalf. It's simply based on the FAFSA and the school's eligibility criteria. Okay, work study is another type of federal aid. Work study is a bit deceiving to students because it's part of your financial aid package, it shows up on your award letter, but it's never an item that directly impacts your bottom line. So work study is a program where the federal government is encouraging campuses to hire students that have need. Because students who get hired to work on campus typically are set up to be successful students. They do less running around to their part-time jobs because they physically can do it maybe in between classes or evenings after class, but they're already physically on campus and they're engaged with the campus community. They're getting to know more faculty and staff. So the federal work study program really encourages departments at the institutions themselves to hire students who have need. So, essentially, the benefit to the student is if you have work study, you get first opportunity for the jobs on campus. It is not a guarantee of employment, and it is not an aid type that impacts your bottom line. So if you get a job on campus as a work study student, you will be paid just like any other student. You will get a paycheck to help with your expenses of college. But it's not something that directly goes to your tuition unless you choose to turn around and make a payment towards your tuition. The reason it's a federal program is the federal government is helping subsidize a portion of your wages. So they're actually paying a portion of your wages, which allows the departments on campus to stretch their budgets further because they don't have to spend as much money on employment. They can maybe hire more students because they have more money to give because the federal government is helping with the wages for those work study students. So check those out if you qualify. And again, you'll know that on your award letter, and then you have to take the initiative to contact the campus. Typically, there's a student employment office at our campus that traditionally has been done by our business office, who has a sense of what jobs are available. And then last but not least for federal programs are the federal student loans. So the federal student loans are something that of course is repayable. It is a loan to a student to help offset their educational expenses. The benefit of the federal student loans is they're student loans that are available to students without a cosigner. So the stipulation is you have to be enrolled at least part-time, so in at least 6 credits at an institution that provides federal financial aid. They don't do a credit check and those sorts of things, so they don't require cosigners. You simply have to be enrolled in college and have educational expenses. In addition to that, they do have better interest rates, so we're going to look at that as well. So there are a couple different programs. There's the subsidized loan, the unsub, and the plus. And then there's the Perkins loan program. So I want to differentiate there. The direct loans, the sub and the unsub, are available to you at every institution. And it's based on 6 credits of enrollment and then the year you're in school. Because the loan limits are different as you progress from freshman, sophomore, junior, senior year. The Perkins loan program is a federal loan program as well. Not all schools participate. For example, UW-Fond du Lac, we do not participate. And the reason for that is our tuition is low enough that the federal direct loan covers your cost. So the direct loan for a new freshman is $5,500. Our tuition is $5,200. The direct loan does not cover your cost at any other UW institution because they start at $7,200 and climb from there. So you have to have a mix sometimes of the different types of loans if you do not have other aid types available. So then you see the Perkins Loan Program come into play.
Jill, can you recall the right there?
Yep. So the subsidized and the unsubsidized loan. There's always questions, well, which is the better of the two? Subsidized means that the federal government is subsidizing the loan by covering the interest. You, the student, are not being charged any interest as long as you are enrolled in at least 6 credits and continuing your education. Once you drop below 6 credits, so once you either decide to go less than half-time or you withdraw from school or you graduate, then you start accruing interest after your 6-month grace period is up. The unsubsidized loan, on the other hand, starts accruing interest right away. So they determine if you're eligible for the sub based on the FAFSA if you display financial need. So they'll look at the cost of the institution, they'll look at the estimated family contribution from the FAFSA and determine if you have need. If you have need, you get the sub. If you don't have need, you get the unsub. Okay. As you'll see, the interest rate is actually quite generous. It's 4.29%. Just 3 years ago, it was 6.8. So we, in the education profession, are really happy with where things are right now. The PLUS loan, on the other hand, is a parent loan. So the PLUS loan is taken out by a parent of a student who is enrolled in at least 6 credits. I would recommend to families that you always pursue the direct sub and unsub first. And the biggest qualifier is it's in the student's name, not impacting parent debt to income ratio. It's also got a much lower interest rate and a much lower origination fee. As you'll see, the interest rate is approaching 7%. So this is not the best bang for your buck. But it is a good alternative if you need additional financing to help offset the cost of college. Because if you start looking at private student loans through any variety of lenders, Wells Fargo, US Bank, whatever the case may be, that's going to be a much different application process. They're going to be looking at a variety of things in your credit check, and the interest rates typically are higher. Okay, so shifting from federal aid. So federal aid is the Pell Grant, the SEOG, work, study, and loans. The state of Wisconsin also has grant programs available to students. So you'll see this in the middle of that packet again. But the most common grant is the Wisconsin grant. There is a Wisconsin grant for UW system schools, and then there's a Wisconsin grant for private schools in the state. If you go out of state, you are not eligible for Wisconsin grants. So if you go out of state, you are only eligible for the federal aid programs, okay? There are a couple other grant programs available. I'm not going to dive into the nitty-gritty of those, but in the middle of that handout, you'll see if there's extra steps required. So, for example, the Indian Student Assistant Grant, you do have to provide documentation of your Indian heritage before you can qualify for the grant. So there's a couple extra steps for some aid programs, but the Wisconsin grant, the only application is that FAFSA that you'll file. Loan programs from the state are very far and few between, and this actually becomes more applicable when you're in graduate level programs. So I'm not going to dive into that because it's not relevant to your bachelor's degree or those first 4 years of your college experience. Okay, so federal versus non-federal aid. Of course, you have the scholarship programs. As we talked about, those you have to apply for independently from the FAFSA, so you do have to take extra action on those. Any questions about the types of aid that you would be awarded? The other piece is, go ahead.
What was the talent
That actually requires a nomination from an institution to there's a regional office, oh gosh, what's it called? There's a regional office, there's one in Green Bay. WEOP, Wisconsin Educational Opportunity Programs, right? Programs, where a student is nominated either by their high school or by a college, and then they are contacted and they have to file some additional steps.
I believe some of the qualifying factors would be like if you receive free and reduced lunch, or if you are a first generation college student, you have to meet like of the 7 tasks, 3 of them.
Yes, and that is included in the middle of the brochure where you can find more information about TIP as well. Okay, so the one thing I want to just point out about private schools as well, as you're aware, most of them offer merit-based scholarships right off the top. So when you apply to a private school, they're going to look at your ACT, they're going to look at your GPA, they're going to look at your class rank, and they typically, their price tag might be 30 grand, but they're going to say, well, you qualify for the President's Scholarship, which is 12 grand. That's going to be part of your financial aid award letter right away up front. So that'll be on top of your federal and state aid. So keep that in mind, that kind of helps offset the cost at those private institutions as well. Okay, we're going to shift gears now. So how do we get this FAFSA process underway? This is the site that you will go to. So the FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. Free is the key word in that sentence. If you start by mistake at FAFSA.com, for example, they charge you like $75 or $90 to help you file the FAFSA. When in reality, they're not helping you at all because you're still doing it online, and so on and so forth. So make sure you are starting out at FAFSA.gov. If anybody is trying to sell you something, you know you're at the wrong spot. Any of the parents in the room already have students in college? Okay, so this past May, there was a shift in the financial aid process just a bit in terms of how you electronically sign the application. So everybody who's new in the room going through this process for the first time, you have to establish what's called an FSA ID, and this is your electronic signature. As you'll see, there's a little padlock up at the top. That's where you initially do that process. Student and parent, at least one parent, has to have an FSA ID because you always need a parent to sign the FAFSA. You don't need both, but at least one. Parents who have filed the FAFSA previously and have used a 4-digit PIN number, you have to now establish an FSA ID, and that was effective this past May. The good news is they actually allow you to pull in information from your PIN, and then they kind of mesh them together, but then you'll have to set up your own username and password. So that should be step one in the process, and then of course you're going to click Start a New FAFSA. So it's a free application for aid. You can start working on it January 1st, or for next year, October 1st. And then keep an eye on the college's priority deadline. That varies from institution to institution. Again, UW Fond du Lac and a lot of the UW schools, it's somewhere between March 15th and April 1st. But most private schools are earlier than that. You need your FSA ID, and if you do need help, there, of course, is a nice little Contact Us link where you can get some assistance real time as you are filing the FAFSA. Completing the FAFSA, as you go through the prompts of completing the FAFSA, they provide detailed information regarding what's expected in the various fields. So read the definitions carefully. Make sure when you're filing the FAFSA, if it's referencing student, or you, it might say you because the student should be filing the FAFSA on their own with the parent's assistance. But it's very easy if a parent sits down to file the FAFSA and it says, what are your wages? To put in your wages. And I often see that parental information gets put in the student section by mistake. So remember, students should be filing the FAFSA. In the student information, they should be putting data in, and the parent parent information, parents should be putting data in or helping the student enter that information on their behalf. Enter names and social security numbers exactly. This is another issue for some students where they by mistake put their last name first or their first name last, and they switch those fields. What's going to happen is when you hit submit, the student, it goes through all these database matches. So it looks at the Social Security Administration, it looks at the Department of Defense, it looks at Homeland Security, and so on and so forth. If there is a name mismatch, the FAFSA will be rejected and it will not move forward. So it's always really important to double check your name and double check your Social Security number, because they are going to make sure that those two things jive. And if they don't, you're dead in your tracks. Things will not move forward. Okay? Triple check everything. And there's no harm in having your application sent to multiple schools. So if you're in the process of kind of navigating through where you're going to end up for your freshman year of college, include all of the schools that you are interested in. You can list up to 10 schools. So feel free to include them all up front. Feel free, if you haven't already, to apply to a variety of different schools and then make some honest comparisons between the different award letters and so forth to make sure it's a good fit financially for you and your family. So the information needed is reflected here. You do need your social, and again, you need to make sure that's correct. Dates, you will be filing the FAFSA. You will, as students right out of high school, be required to put parental information, so you will need to know the dates related to your parents' current statuses, tax returns, most recent bank statement. You are required to reflect your cash savings balances, so cash savings and checking, and then records of income as listed there. One of the biggest questions we get is, why am I considered a dependent student if I'm moving off on my own and my parents are not helping me pay for college? Why am I not independent? Or, my parents no longer claim me as a dependent on their taxes, why am I not independent for financial aid? The Department of Education has very rigid guidelines on who is dependent or independent for financial aid purposes. If a student can indicate yes to any of the questions on the screen, then they are independent in the eyes of the Department of Education. So when you're filing the FAFSA, it's going to have you answer about 5 questions. If you say no, 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 they're going to pop up a few more questions. No, 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 a few more. No, no, no. You are dependent. It has no bearing on how the taxes are filed. It also has no bearing on whether or not you're moving away from home and paying your own rent. If you cannot say yes to any of these, you are dependent and required to put parental information on the FAFSA. Okay? Reporting parental information also becomes a bit dicey in this day and age because the family structures vary from household to household. So it's a matter of determining which parent is the most relevant or which parental information should be included on the FAFSA. If you come from a household where your parents are married, both of your biological parents are married, then it's a no-brainer. You put both your parents on the FAFSA. It becomes a little bit dicier when your parents have had changes in marital status. So, for those in the room who have parents who are divorced, what you need to do is navigate through, and you have to kind of do some self-evaluation here and make a determination based on the following things. First, you say, which parent do I live with a majority of the year, or more during the academic year? Which parent do I live with more? If you say it's 50-50, I spend 1 week at mom dad's, the next week at mom's, the next week at dad's, it's 50-50 across the board. Then you have to look at who truly provides more of your financial support. Is it mom or dad? At that point, if you say, no, the divorce decree was 50-50, it's directly square across the lines, then I start saying, okay, who's providing your health insurance? And some of those things, who's paying your auto insurance? What policies are you under? Because you really just have to identify which parent to start with. Once you identify the biological parent that you should be included on the FAFSA, then you say, is that biological parent remarried? If the biological parent is remarried, both parent and step-parent have to be included on the FAFSA, is the way the process works. Okay? So this kind of helps me navigate through. I'm sure it's not very clear in the small handout, but it really comes down to who did you live with more, who provides more of your financial support, and then once you identify that, what's their marital status. If they're single, then you include just that parent, and the other biological parent is not included whatsoever. If they are remarried, both parent and step-parent are included. If you have questions about your individual situation, I'll certainly field those after. You can corner me before you go. The other complicated things for a lot of family are reporting of assets. And this is where I would say use that help button if you need it. Because even the financial aid offices aren't always super clear because so many situations are so unique to the individual family. But assets are a variety of things as listed there. They do not include retirement accounts as assets. So that is one mistake that is often made. If most of your assets are tied up in retirement accounts, those you do not report. If you do not report the value of your home, for example, as either. If you are a farmer, you do not include the value of the family farm if you do not employ more than 100 people on your farm, which most families do not. So these are what are included. This is what is not included. On the FAFSA, when you get to those questions, there are detailed explanations on the right-hand side in the help box. So use those to initially help you navigate what should be included and what should not. Like I said, the help and hints on the right side is helpful. You can always live chat with them, or there is a phone number for the federal processor as well to get some assistance. And then, of course, the financial aid office at the individual campus that you plan to attend can help you navigate through some of these processes as well. How will your need be determined? So I'm going to move forward here. So we talked about how to file the FAFSA. We talked about what types of programs are included, but how is your award truly calculated? Like I said at the beginning, every institution is required to calculate a cost of attendance, and that's going to be a cost of attendance based on if you're living at home, a cost of attendance if you're living on your own, a cost of attendance if you're living in campus housing. So they're going to look at the total cost of tuition and fees, room and board, transportation, etc. And then that expected family contribution, that is the output from the FAFSA itself. So when you hit submit, and they take a look at all of your financial information, they take a look at the household size, they take a look at the number of kids in college, they're going to actually determine an estimated family contribution. When you hit submit, you will see that EFC, and you'll kind of have an idea from there what types of aid you qualify for. Most commonly, if you're about 5,500 or less, you may qualify for a mix of loans and grants. If you're above that 5,500 general mark, you're typically in the loans only, federal work study category. You are always eligible for some type of aid, even if you have a very high EFC. The bare minimum you're eligible for is an unsubsidized loan. It's worth, especially your first time around, to file the FAFSA just to see what you do qualify for. But they're going to take the cost of attendance, they're going to take that EFC, and they're going to determine if you have need. So in terms of calculating that EFC, of course, like I said, that's all based on what you've inputted into the FAFSA. They are looking at so many different things. It's not all driven by income and assets. They're looking at the age of the oldest parent because they're assuming as parents progressively get closer to retirement, they're going to be putting more into retirement accounts to set themselves up for the future. So they're saying, okay, we're going to protect more of this parent's income because they really should be putting more money aside for their financial security in the future. So they look at things like that. They look at the number in the family. They look at the number of students in college, because if you have more than one student in college, of course your resources are spread a little thinner because you're helping more than one student go. So there's a variety of things that go into that EFC, and a variety of things are protected. And there's a little caveat there about adjustments to the EFC. That's what I was talking about when that might become more commonplace now that students are using the same tax information for 2 years. But if your situation changes, that is a very good time to get in contact with the financial aid office, because they can help you. They essentially have to collect additional documentation from you, but they can help reevaluate if your EFC should actually be changed based on new information and new data. Oops, wrong way. Award letters. So once they get the cost of attendance less the EFC and determined need, you will get a financial aid award letter that will outline a variety of different types of aid you can qualify for. Those are sent out in the spring. They'll make sure that you have a variety based on your financial need, and then that's the point where you really need to look at those bottom line expenses. Keep in mind, federal and state aid programs, you qualify for the same aid regardless of where you go, because those are driven by the EFC. The only thing that's going to change in federal and state aid is whether you qualify for a subsidized or an unsubsidized loan based on higher costs of attendance. So the federal Pell Grant, the Wisconsin grant, those things are strictly based on EFC. So if you go to an institution that is more expensive, your federal and state aid do not change. What you want to see from them then is what types of institutional aid are they providing to offset the cost, to bring it into even playing fields or even playing ground. Because you'll need to determine what your family can financially afford to pay out of pocket or finance through student loans. So you'll want to take the award letter, you're going to want to look at tuition and fees, room and board, calculate out any grants that a student qualifies for, reduce any scholarships that they qualify for, see what that bottom line dollar is, and then determine what makes the most sense. Did you follow me? Financial aid fund. Does anybody have any questions? Jill?
Can you talk about, for that estimated family contribution, at one point you used to factor in a parent's age, the closer they were for
Yep.
retirement, they didn't get dinged as much for their assets?
I did talk about that.
Oh, I just wasn't listening.
But that is true. So in the FAFSA calculation itself, what they do is they actually protect a certain portion of income and a certain portion of assets. So income is protected because they are indicating, okay, families have specific needs. They have needs to, feed and pay the mortgage and have food on the table. So they're going to protect a certain portion of the income to make sure those needs are met. They're actually going to protect a portion of the income to make sure that you have money set aside for medical expenses. So there's a variety of things that are included in what's called the income protection allowance, where a certain percentage of your income is not touched no matter what. On the flip side, the asset protection allowance, that's typically a percentage of your assets are protected because as you approach retirement, they want to make sure that you're setting aside more of your assets towards retirement accounts, etc. That is why retirement accounts aren't included on the FAFSA as well, because they want you to be contributing to those things for your long-term sufficiency. So yet, as you get older, you'll be expected to contribute less to your students' college education. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Yes, I have a junior in college right now.
Yep.
So right now I'm doing the FAFSA for her. Will I have to do it again in October?
So you have a junior in college right now, so you're doing the FAFSA for her for next school year. You'll be doing the FAFSA, so you have another student going into college?
She's a junior this year.
Oh, she's a junior this year.
And my other one's a junior college.
Okay, so you're gonna file the 2016-17 FAFSA for your junior in college to go into her senior year. And then you're gonna file the 16-17, back up, the 17-18 FAFSA for your current junior in October. Your junior in college, it depends on if she's entering a 5th year or not. If they're not graduating in 4 years, then you'll be filing 2 FAFSAs. And you are required, parents, to file FAFSAs for each individual student. And essentially input the information twice. The one thing that wasn't covered on here, they do have a really nifty tool. Now it's called the IRS Data Retrieval Tool, where in years past, you had to manually enter everything on the FAFSA. You had to look at your taxes. They would say, look at line 7 and put that data here. Look at line 32 and put that data here. Now they actually have a pretty awesome tool where you can link directly to the IRS and pull tax information in. The caveat with that is, students going through it the first time, you're typically really eager to file the FAFSA. You want to get it off your plate, you want to get it done, you want to get award letters so you can start navigating through what makes the most sense. So if you're filing your taxes come February or early March, and you go ahead and you want to file your FAFSA right away, of course the IRS does not have your data yet, because you just filed your taxes. It takes 2 or 3 weeks for them to process your data, and then you would be eligible to use the IRS data retrieval tool. So that becomes kind of the caveat where there's an issue. But for next year, your 2015 tax information will already be processed, and you'll be able to link to the IRS. It's going to pull your data right in, and it's going to be considered verified. For new filers, so new freshmen, where this becomes relevant is 30% of students are selected for verification, which means 1 out of 3 students have to provide additional information to the financial aid office before they can even get an award letter. The IRS data retrieval tool at that point allows you to log back into the FAFSA, link to the IRS at that time, and then your tax information is considered verified. If you do not link to the IRS and your student is selected for verification, you're actually required to track down a tax return transcript directly from the IRS and provide a hard copy to your financial aid office. So that involves either mailing in a form, requesting the IRS send it to you, then you have to submit that form to financial aid, or getting on the phone and being on hold for a half an hour or an hour, trying to get through to the IRS saying, I need a tax return transcript for my student's financial aid, and they'll say, okay, we'll mail that to you, you'll get it in 5 to 10 days. If you, at the point of being selected for verification, so you get a notification from the financial aid office saying, we need you to do some additional things, go in and link to the IRS, because then you don't have to deal with that extra hassle of working directly with the IRS. So that's where it becomes relevant. I still encourage you, as soon as you file your taxes, to go ahead and file the FAFSA. If you file your taxes in January and you want to wait till the end of February and give it that 3 weeks, that would be okay. But if you file your taxes in March or early April, I would say do your FAFSA right away, get that information on file, so you're meeting priority deadline, and then, if selected for verification, go in and use the tool at that point. Does that make sense?
If I can just add, if you're using the IRS data retrieval, make sure that you're using exactly the same address that's on your tax preparation. So if you, on one road, write County Road N, and on the other one you put Highway N, at times it doesn't link properly in won't work for you. So it has to be exactly the same as what it is prepared on your taxes.
It has gotten better, believe it or not, but yes, that's the biggest issue. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you so much for coming tonight. I will stick around if you have individual questions related to your situation. Best of luck going through this process for the first time, and certainly contact us if you have questions.
If this is still intimidating for you, there is an event called College Bowl Wisconsin that is held all over the state, and Fond du Lac is a site. So I have outside a flyer for you that has all the dates and times. Someone will individually sit down and walk you through this process on those events. So if you bring your stuff with you, you'll walk out with your FAFSA completed. And Marion has an event as well as I think UWO. So here in North Fond du Lac.